Hello and welcome back to The Man from Hildebrand. Again, it's been a bit of a long time since the last episode, but to be fair, I have been on holiday. We are now in August, which for us Bond fans is a very kind of important month because it means that this is the month where the seventh actor to play James Bond on the cinema now begins to be cast. So, of course, we're going to get Nina Gold. Denis Villeneuve is probably now finishing up on Doom 3, so he's now going to have a bit more time to then get involved with Bond 26. So, yeah, this is the month where we will, where the casting begins for the next Bond. The other week, Amy Pascal, whilst promoting the latest Spider-Man film, was questioned about the progress on Bond 26, and she said, to expect an announcement of the new actor later on in the year, which kind of absolutely makes sense. I've always said it'll be kind of autumn, sort of, fall of this year. So yeah, naturally and generally, a few more names have been thrown into that mix, which, as I've said before, I just don't get involved with because it's a waste of time, a waste of energy, and I just can't be asked to, kind of speculate and, wank over the latest name that's going to be James Bond. Regarding to the announcement, I kind of feel that it's going to be big. It'll probably be at Pinewood Studios on the 007 stage, and I feel that they would, announce the new James Bond as well as the supporting cast as the leading lady, the villain, possibly the new MQ Moneypenny. That's if they even appear in this film. And they may even give us a title. Now, sort of kind of looking back at it, this is probably similar to 94, 95 time, when, again, there was a kind of a huge hiatus, between License to Kill and GoldenEye. Same here, there's a huge gap between No Time to Die and Bond 26. So, and again, it's kind of new ownership. When GoldenEye was kind of, brought to our attention, it was pretty much in the control of Michael and Barbara. They had kind of took over from Cubby. And now, in 2026, it's the same kind of setup. It's now new ownership. It's now in the hands of Amazon. So I kind of feel that, the announcement of the next Bond will be absolutely huge. So yes, August, this is when the seventh James Bond is cast. And later on in the year, we will then find out who is the new James Bond, and possibly as well as who's going to play the villain and the leading lady, plus a title. So yes, the bulk of this episode is going to mainly aim at collectors because of some really interesting things kind of coming our way. But first of all, let's talk music. Now, I have finally received my Spectre expanded score from LalaLand. I received that from my beautiful wife on my birthday, and I've listened to it, and I must say that with that score being expanded, it's certainly, give it some justice. It's kind of worked in my favour. I mean, it certainly hasn't changed my opinion on the film because I absolutely detest the film. And I certainly don't think, and I still don't think Thomas Newman was appropriate for Bond. His Skyfall score was good, quite refreshing. But yeah, I think the fact that, all the tracks are in chronological order, and plus we've got film versions and sort of film edits and kind of unreleased music on there, certainly, does kind of, add to its depth, which of course I think so far any of these expanded scores have kind of worked in its favour. Now, La La Land so far has set a kind of a new sort of template where I was kind of predicting that we would get a new title every 2 months. So obviously at the very end of March we got Diamonds Are Forever. Sort of beginning of June we got Spectre, and then on the 30th of July, whilst I was on holiday, and I got an email only from La La Land to announce their next Bond title, and my God, I was absolutely fucking traumatized. I was mesmerized. I just could not process it. And of course, it was Never Say Never Again. Now, Keith Hicks, who is a subscriber and I talk to regularly, has always kind of said, I really hope that La La Land will do Never Say Never Again. And I was kind of like, well, honestly, I just don't see them doing it. It's the kind of thing Quartet might do. I was wrong. And, and of course, La La Land have come along and gave us Never Say Never Again. I mean, there's so many questions floating around in my head thinking, what does this mean? How has this happened? The first thing I thought, well, okay, will this be available on the 007 store? Which, of course, it isn't. And I'm thinking, is this, with it now being all under Amazon, will Amazon finally include Never Say Never Again, with the Eon Bond films? Will it now be part of the collection? Now, rightly so, if you go on the La La Land website, click on the James Bond category, Never Say Never Again's on there, and it should be. So it's kind of nice to see it not being put to the side and for it to be included, because I had a bit of a rant a couple of episodes ago about why, Never Say Never Again is always, put to the side because it's not official. Wrong term. It's not a film made by Eon, just like Bond 26 isn't made by Eon. But is that going to make Bond 26 crap? Who knows? But no, Never Say Never Again. I mean, yeah. I'm not a massive fan of that soundtrack. Mainly, there's going to be, like, Michel Legrand fans out there who love it, fair enough. But, as a Bond fan and as being used to the music of John Barry and giving us that Bond sound, obviously what Michel Legrand did was totally different. What I did notice was on the artwork, there's no 007 on it. And I looked at the small print and the copyright notes, and there's no mention of London operations or Amazon MGM or any of that. So it's still kind of not sort of, kind of fully absorbed, but nonetheless, it's absolutely wonderful that we have got the Never Say Never Again soundtrack. For August, I was honestly expecting For Your Eyes Only. But I'm pretty certain that may be the next title. With what I understand, how these Bond titles work is that there's never been a contract with Eon, and that, they will, Amazon will give them the thumbs up. Yeah, you can do this title, and it's whenever everything's been passed by Universal Music and all the sort of governing bodies, that's when they can sort of release it. Of course, we may even get, A View to a Kill in the meantime, because that's still kind of waiting to be approved. And it's obviously, as soon as that's approved, La La Land will just, get it out there and get it released. People have also now received The Man with the Golden Gun on vinyl, which was announced back in April, I believe, from La La Land. So yes, last year they said that there's open to give us Goldfinger, Moonraker, The Man with the Golden Gun on vinyl. That's now happened. I think Neil S. Bulk may have mentioned in an interview that they are looking at doing On Her Majesty's Secret Service on vinyl, which would be a good one. I can't see why they wouldn't eventually do all of the, titles on vinyl. First Light soundtrack by The Flight is now available to stream via Apple, Spotify, Google Play. Now, it was suggested that it would have been on CD, but there's no sign of the CD yet. Now, of course, I have now downloaded and bought the First Light soundtrack via Apple. There's 38 tracks on there. And I must say, as a listening experience, there's nothing really original. There's a lot of tracks which are very similar to Newman, very similar to Zimmer. It clearly captures the recent Daniel Craig era. and there's actually a few pieces missing. So this isn't complete. There is actually a few pieces missing. Now, what I notice is that the Bond theme that is heard on some of the levels aren't on this. And I'm sure that there was also a few pieces of music in there which was a rendition of the Lana Del Rey title song, which again hasn't made its way on to the actual album. The only time you get the Bond theme in its full entirety is the very last track, which is Earn the Number. And you get the Emergency Secret Service theme in there. Probably a part of me kind of regrets kind of buying it, really. I mean, when the Flight was interviewed, they say, oh yeah, you know, we understand how important the Bond legacy is, and you know, we've kind of paid tribute to John Barry. All you've done is use a Bond theme and use the Emergency Secret Service theme. That's not really paying tribute. You know, paying tribute, in my opinion, is writing original music with hints of what John Barry could have done. You know, I wanted the muting of the brass. I wanted some spy jazz in there, and we didn't get any of it. So yeah, the First Light soundtrack is available to stream through Apple, Google Play, Spotify, all that. Now, Corgi are currently celebrating their 70 years in business, and in order of that, they are kind of doing what Action Man did back in 2015, when Action Man reissued all their original figures in their original packaging. I absolutely loved. And Corgi are doing exactly the same. Corgi have released a range of the old toy cars that they did back in the day when they first set up, reissuing them in the same kind of design packaging. They've released the Aston Martin DB5. They've done the Batmobile. They've done various of others. I think they might have done the Saint or the Avengers car. So they've basically gone really kind of retro. Whether or not they'll give us a Toyota 2000 GT in the original You Only Live Twice packaging, who knows? Or may even reissue the Moon Buggy from Diamonds Are Forever. I mean, personally, I would absolutely love it if they actually reissued the bobsleigh and the whiz wheels and the Corgi rocket set, you know, a Majesty's Secret Service set. So part of this set, Corgi have now released a 3-car gift set, and it includes the reissue of the very first car that they did in 1965, which is the gold one, and then as well as the 1968 reissue of the Aston Martin DB5, which was silver. And the third Aston Martin is what Corgi call the final edition. Now, I've got huge question marks about that. Now, this is apparently the 2025 edition of the Aston Martin DB5, which, according to Corgi, is the most accurate and detailed diecast yet. So after 60 odd years, they finally managed to get the colour right. Now, they have done the DB5 from No Time to Die, and I must say that the colour on there was spot on. But why they call it the final edition, I don't know. I don't know if this is sort of a cheap, tacky marketing ploy, which people have used, and I'm not a big fan of. You know, they claim, you know, this to be the last one ever, you know, quick, buy it now before it sells out. So people then panic buy, and then all of a sudden they come back and people are like, oh. Yeah, certain people have done that. They know exactly who they are. I just think it's a very cheap and tacky way of doing it. Now, I can't see this being the final edition from Corgi, because I'm sure as soon as Bond 26 comes out, Corgi will no doubt once again reissue the DB5. So this gift box, I don't know if it's limited, but it's retails at £99. You can either buy it from Corgi or buy it from the 007 store. I thought about it for 10 seconds. I thought, you know what? No, because I've got Aston Martin DB5s coming out my ears. I don't need any more. So last month, San Diego Comic-Con, Factory Entertainment were there. And this is something I always get a bit excited about, because I always go onto YouTube and always have a look at their stand and see if they've got any new Bond kind of items kind of in the works. I was a little bit disappointed this year. They only had one new item, which which will be released next year and could well be limited to 500. I don't know the price of it, but this item is the wrist dart gun as seen in Moonraker. Now, I saw it, I thought, oh wow, and I'm going to get it because, as I've said, with Factory Entertainment, I love them, but some of their products are a little bit hit and miss. The wrist dart gun, I'm surprised that they haven't done it sooner. And I think, you know what, that will go wonderfully with the Moonraker laser, which they had originally done back in 2012, but they've only just kind of reissued it like 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, that's going to be available 2027. Might even get them in the stores for Christmas. Who knows? Last year they had a range of scaled replica props, which on there was the From Us With Love attacher case, the jetpack from Thunderbolt, and Blofeld's batho tub from Diamonds Are Forever. There was none of them to see this time, and I asked a question about that range, and they said that it is still in production, or still in development. So hopefully we might get something at the back end of this year or even next year, but I'm kind of really looking forward to them scale prop replicas because they are much cheaper and they don't take up too much room either. What else is happening in the world of Bond? Shaken and Stirred, the James Bond fan group, which you can find on Facebook, have announced their latest event, which is going to be taking place in October at Pinewood Hotel. This is Double or Die, and this is to celebrate 55 years of Diamonds Are Forever, 45 years of For Your Eyes Only, and 20 years of Casino Royale. I believe there's a few tickets left. Not too sure how many there is, but I would suggest to get them because they are absolutely. I mean, this will be the third event I've been to, and it's absolutely brilliant. You know, they have a lot of Q&As. They've got a fantastic lineup of guests, and it's just overall a brilliant sort of weekend to just hang out with these guests and to talk Bond with fellow Bond fans. So that's happening in October. I believe it's the last weekend in October. So yeah, there's a few tickets left. Just pop onto the Shaken and Stirred Facebook group or Instagram, and you'll be able to find the details out there. But it's both run by Nick Fentiman and Matthew Wood, which are absolutely sort of great guys. They have, you know, really, I mean, yeah, I don't know how they do it, but they seem to just pull off these events wonderfully. Also, the James Bond Sound Off. It is still going. I believe that Never Say Never Again will be the last soundtrack to vote for, and that'll be 26th of September, I believe. So yeah, James Bond Sound Off, it's basically something I've been doing for 3 years over at Hildebrand. It's also on the Shaken and Stirred group and on the James Bond music page as well. And it's where, you know, every Wednesday I will release a soundtrack title and you've just got to just rate it out of 10. 2024, A Master's Secret Service came out number 1. 2025, The Living Daylights came out number 1. So it's kind of down to you guys to see what will come at number 1 this year. So I think that's it for today. So we have got a fantastic announcement from LalaLand with the release of Never Say Never Again. The Man with the Golden Gun vinyl is now shipped, and I believe people are receiving them. We've got a brand new Aston Martin DB5 gift set from Corgi. We've got the Moonraker wrist dart gun from Factory Entertainment due to be released next year. We've also got First Light soundtrack available to download. That's it for this week, and I'll see you next time. So yes, thank you for subscribing. Don't forget to like and share, and cheerio.